Hey, good morning, William. This is a demo video for you for your Bushido saber. This is installed with a Proffie. I'm a bit proud of this chassis. It's probably one of the smallest removable chassis that I've done. This saber can be a little deceiving. When you look at it from the outside, it looks like it has all the room in the world. But really, the only room that you have to install this guy is about from here to here. All right, about that much room. So what I did was I gave you two different color buttons. First of all, you and I kind of talked about this when you had this done before and it came back. You had to do some weathering to the rest of the saber to match some things that had been done to it. So showing off the weathering real quick. So around the switch area, all the weathering you did to this guy was very tastefully done. I think it looks really nice. You've got a Carl Chen PCB in here, which we'll go over here in a second. I'll light that up. All the weathering here. All right, so because you have a black saber and you knocked it down to some bare aluminum, what I did was I gave you a black switch and I gave you a silver one. Uh, First of all, it matches the saber, and then secondly, it helps you determine which switch is power and which is auxiliary because this saber is very symmetrical. So if you were to have two of the same buttons, it would be very hard to tell which is which, right? So black switch on this guy is power, silver switch is auxiliary. All right. How to get to the chassis is you want to come over here and you want to unscrew your pommel. Your pommel is a little bit weird in the fact that it screws all the way into, or I'm sorry, the pommel cap rather screws all the way into the pommel, right? So when it's in there, it's flush with the pommel. You got to use your fingers like this. When you tighten it, though, you may want to use a tool. All right. On this pommel, we'll talk, or this pommel cap, we'll talk about this here in a second. But you'll open it up. You'll see your chassis right there. It'll fall right into your hand. All right. This is the smallest diameter chassis I've ever done. This is probably, I think this is a 0.87-inch diameter chassis where the PCB that I use is 0.86 inches, right? So normally when you design a chassis in Fusion or for like anything else that's removable, you'll have a piece of the chassis come over here and it will encompass this PCB and it will hold it right centered where it needs to be. I couldn't do it on this guy. I had to glue this guy exactly in, and it had to be straight when I glued it in. So that was a little nerve wracking. This PCB lines up with a 14-pin PCB system in here. Let me see if I can shine a light in there for you and show you. So all of the traces had to be exact so that they matched up with the pins. So that PCB in there has got 14 pins on it, right? And that never comes out, so you never have to worry about that. That's what that looks like. That's a Smuggler's Outpost Switch Pixel PCB set. But anyway, had to glue that on exactly center, but that's good to go. Your Proffie board is right here. For right now is a snap fit down into the shelf. If you lift this Proffie board up over and over again and mess with your config, you will eventually probably need to use some E6000 to keep that held in place. All right, but I got all your sound fonts on there. Everything is good to go. There's a copy of your config file on the SD card, so you'll see what I did there in case you ever want to change it or build from it. You can put a 90-degree cable in there, but to get to your board or your SD card and your USB, I would just suggest popping that board up like that diagonally, doing what you need to do and snapping it back down. All right. Had to go with an 18350 battery on this guy because it is so tiny. I forget how long this chassis is. I can tell you real quick. It's approximately 4.3 inches long, which is not very long. All right, because you have also a 20 millimeter speaker back here that's fully encompassed. So we got the best sound that we could out of this guy. It is just an all-around small chassis. But because this is a Bushido saber, I went ahead and I put the Bushido code back here on the back of the chassis in kanji. So hopefully you like the way that came out. If you ever wanted to take this chassis and go over it with some silver rub and buff, that would come out really well. It's not something that I did though, just in case you wanted to keep it plain. right, so that's what your chassis looks like. Now to get the pommel to push up against the chassis and push it up against those 14 pins, what I had to do first of all is I printed a spacer here. I 3D printed a spacer and glued it on. But before I did that, I took this pommel out to my lathe and I lathed off probably about a 1/4 inch of the material over there, because what was happening was it was pressing up against the speaker. There was some vibration on the speaker and I didn't like that. So I went in, I cut out about a 1/4 of an inch of material, and now it's all good to go. All right, so that's what we did there. Very small pommel cap. To put your battery in, this is your battery, by the way. I'll be sending it with you. If you want to get some extra batteries and you don't know where to get them, let me know. I can definitely send you a link. I get these from Ilum, but they look like that, 18350. All right, you want to try the best as you can to put it in like this, so straight up and down, just like that. So everything's good to go. You can put this chassis in however you like, of course, as long as the PCB in goes in first. All right, so just slide it right in, push it right in, and come over here and lock it down with your pommel cap. Now you can lock this down as tight as you can with your fingers, but when it comes to tightening it all the way, I'm usually using like a pair of tweezers or something. I'll come in here and just give it a nice tight twist to make sure everything is nice and locked down. So when we hit power, right, your LEDs are firing up. Auxiliary up here. And I gave you twist off. Now I'm going to put a blade in here. This is programmed for the particular size blade that you told me that you had. I don't remember offhand, but I did go through our messages last night and program it to that particular length. This one is my small TriStar test blade that we're going to throw in here real quick. All right, so you know on this saber you have 2 grub screws up top. All right, you've got this one right here, that's your blade retention, so that's the one that you're going to want to use all the time. And then when you go down here, this grub screw you do not want to mess with. This is what's holding your PCB holder in place, so just go ahead and leave that tight. All right, but we'll go ahead and lock our blade down. Of course, blaster bolts is just tapping the auxiliary. Blade lockup is holding down the auxiliary and hitting the saber. Now on a full-length blade, or the blade that you've got, your blade lockup will come closer to the hilt when the saber is vertical, right? And then as you move it horizontal, the blade lockup moves closer to the tip of the blade. And to trade sound fonts, we'll just hit auxiliary.
Disgraceful.
You've got the dual on here. I mean, you've got some Kyberphonic fonts. You've got a K-Sith font, the aggression font. Every sound font that came with a blade style, I used that blade style. And then on the ones that didn't have them, I went with what you had asked me to do. You said you liked the color red, so everything has a little bit of a different red. This one's kind of a red smoke blade. This is a blade I like to use. It's hard to see on the blade, but hopefully you can see that on my hand. Right. Your force sounds are just like a 1 second press on the power button. A nice blade lock up. See how you can see it here, but then here it's moving closer out here, right?
Just a simple wonder.
Each of your sound fonts has a soundtrack. So if you want to play that soundtrack, when the blade is off, do a 1 second press on the power. And do another press to turn it off. Just like that, right? And of course the Ahsoka Tano blade is silver. Which comes out looking white. But it is technically silver on the FET library. fire blade. This is the real fire blade style. Aggression by K-Sith. This came with 2 different blade styles. So you could, this is the one that is used with the prions, and then you had one that is used without prions, but you asked for this one, so of course that's what's on here. Savage. You can use this single-handedly or 2 hands. It feels comfortable both ways.
Second sister.
Second sister. And a blade lock up, right. This is the Sieve sound font, which I believe is the first one. Good flash on all of them. Of course, if you don't want to use twist off, you can just tap the button to turn it off. Just like that. So either way it works. All right. So we'll go ahead and take the blade out of this guy and go over taking the battery out. You will need to use a tool. So again, I'm using a pair of tweezers. I'll show you how to do that. Let me unscrew this just a little bit more. Pop that right out. I'll have to use this to kind of loosen the pummel cap again, just a little bit, and then I can come over here and I can do it. Whoops. I can loosen it a little bit, and then you can finish it off with your fingers. One thing you want to make sure, if you're going to use tweezers, don't put them in too much. You do not want to poke your speaker, okay? But it'll fall right out into your hand just like that. And then what you want to do is come over here, use the back end from the positive side, which is over here by your speaker, and you can just simply pop it right out like that. And that is your chassis. Still try to manage to hide all the wiring. You can see a little bit of my positive wiring right there, but other than that, everything's pretty hidden and nice and neat. All right, so yeah, that's basically your Bushido saber. Let me know if you have any questions, and if not, I will package this guy up and get it out in the mail to you today. All right, thanks, man.